Good evening. You're watching ThinkTech Asia, and I'm David Day. This evening we're going to be talking about Israel and Palestine, deal broken or hope. And to help us with this conversation, we have a most unusual young woman that I want to introduce to you. This is Priya Rashid, and Priya is the ThinkTech Asia winner of our award called Hawaii's Future International Superstar. And later in this show, you're going to find out exactly why Priya has earned this award. She deserves it. And we'll talk a little bit about Priya. So I want to talk a little bit about your background. But welcome to ThinkTech. And this is your first television experience, is it not?
Yes, I'm a little bit nervous, but it's exciting to be here.
Okay, well, don't be nervous. So you are, as I understand it, a junior at UH Manoa, correct?
Yeah, studying journalism.
You're a journalism major. Okay, I think there's a little more to it than that, but we'll explore that with you. And so what happens this fall in terms of your travel? You're leaving in August to do what?
I will be interning in Congress with our Hawaii representatives as a congressional intern.
So there's 4 congressional interns coming from Hawaii.
There's 3 political scientists and myself, all going in August and coming back at the end of the semester.
Okay, now hold on a second, ladies and gentlemen, because there's more to this story, and we'll dribble little pieces out as we go along, and you'll see why Priya really is one of Hawaii's future international superstars. And if you watch this program over the course of weeks or months or years, you know that what we typically cover on a rotating basis are topics that involve international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and typically our guests are cabinet secretaries or ambassadors or experts, CEOs in the private sector, different types of consultants. And it's very, very rare that we have someone on as young as this lady. And so don't be nervous. We've discovered somebody that is a true international superstar looking off into the future. And so if you stop and think about it, yes, our coverage typically focuses on the here and the now, but the power and where the future is dependent in large part on a younger generation. And I thought it would be exciting for you to see this ThinkTech Asia winner. And we'll pick up a discussion in just a moment. But it's an opportunity to see some of the real firepower in the international arena that Hawaii truly possesses. Because Priya, not only being one of the 4 interns, congressional interns coming from Hawaii that will be in Washington this fall, she is also the lone finalist in the competition to sit on the single seat on the Hawaii Board of Regents for the UH. Is that correct?
Yes, I was the only undergraduate representative chosen.
So you're up against 2 graduate students and you lost, is that right?
Yes, but I think it was, it's always, I'm still young, lots of things may come up.
Well, it's also an interesting comment or testimonial about you that the undergraduate campus basically pushed you forward as their nominee. That's who they wanted, right?
Well, the nominations were actually anonymous, so I received a call one day saying, you have an interview coming up in the next few months for Board of Regents. Are you ready? And I thought, really? Okay.
Okay. You know what? It's important, ladies and gentlemen, that you know that Priya has also done work as a relief worker in India, Bangladesh, so South Asia.
And I just recently returned from India last year, where I taught at a boys' school. It was an orphanage for children with HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, things like that, and helping integrate them back into government schools.
And you've worked in Africa and the Sudan.
Yes, and so I've studied Africa, but my relief and my work especially in South Asia. So.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to have a conversation with Ms. Rashid here, and we're going to talk about a topic that I don't know a whole lot about. As most of you know who watch the show, I'm an Asia guy. But we're going to talk about the Middle East. And Priya really is even though she's a junior, an undergraduate, is really something of a Middle East scholar already. And what we want to talk about with you here is I'd like to have a conversation with her that I'd like you to join in with us and to talk about the whole Israeli-Palestinian recent peace negotiations. Can we do that?
Of course, of course.
Okay. And so what we'll do in the course of this is I'll learn something about the whole peace negotiations, and so will you. And at the same time, this will be an opportunity for you as a member of the audience to sit back and look at some of the incredible international firepower that Hawaii has coming on. And so with that as an introduction, let's just get started with control room. How about bring up map number 1 here? And so let's go back, Priya, in time. And so this particular map takes us back to the period right after World War I, immediately when the Ottoman Empire was chopped up. And so we're looking at the time period here, 1917 to 1922. And so this blue area is what's called the British Mandate. And under the British Mandate, what does that mean?
Well, so this area was under British colonial control, but the region was predominantly Palestinian, and that's the region people. These included Christians, Arabs, and Jews, and so it was a very multi-ethnic and multicultural region.
Okay, so let's go to the next map number 2. If we could have that one up. Okay, so here we have the same basic shape, but now we're at a time frame 1923 up until the end of World War II, going into 1947, say. And so that British Mandate has now changed, and so in the orange we get an area called Transjordan. So what does that mean?
Well, after they just brought the two pieces separated, they took Transjordan and they allowed it to be segmented into what is now present-day Israel. And Transjordan now is part of Jordan. And the people that were inside living there, whether they were Christians, Jews, or Arabs, were forced to find new nations. So one was Israel and the other was Jordan.
Okay, and so that's the
blue area is what is now currently Israel. And then on the border of the Jordan River, on the right, you see Transjordan, which is currently part of the nation of Jordan.
Okay, so let's go over to map number 3 now, and let's take a look at this. This map, Priya, can you? This is another way of illustrating what was in the prior map, but maybe help us with what we're looking at here.
So after the separation of the two states, we saw a huge diaspora of people either coming into Israel, also European, African, and also Asian Jews came into the left portion, the green portion. And in the yellow portion, many Arabs and Palestinians, Palestinian Arabs as well, were relocated to the right portion. So that they ended up becoming part of the nation of Jordan, even though they had always been part of the region of Palestine.
Okay, so this map really illustrates the creation of the Jewish state of Israel. Right?
And the intention was that the partition plan was that part of it would be Jewish and part of it would be Arab. And as we can see now, the conflict has become much more complicated over where people do live and have to interact.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, focus on the dark area inside the green there on the country of Palestine. And that's what's called the West Bank, is it not?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that?
And currently, that is what's considered Palestinian Authority, or what others have called occupied territory. So this is where Arab, Palestinian, predominantly Arab people live and are under autonomy from the Israel state.
Okay, and let's go to map number 4 now, if we could. So this map is moving in a little closer into modern day times, and let's talk about what have we got here for this particular map.
And so this just shows you a couple of the very key cities and regions within Israel. So you see the West Bank, and you also see Jerusalem, which is caught quite centered in the middle, and it really indicates part of what will cause a large religious conflict over how important Jerusalem is to the country and to both groups of people. You can also see Golan Heights, which is also considered occupied right now, and that's up in the very right corner. It's that yellow bordering Syria. And so these two areas, that and the Gaza Strip on the very left, have become very heated and contested areas for both the Palestinians living there, but also the Israelis who have to coexist with them.
All right, so those yellow areas, those three, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip, for those in our audience don't know, do they comprise the various pieces of the Palestinian ethnic group? Is that the future state of Palestine, if it should come together, those pieces, arguably?
Yes, in a way, but Palestine really is not an ethnic group. It's a regional group, and they're from many different types of cultures and races. Yeah. But to just lump them together may be very difficult for Israel to try to approach, and even for the other superpowers in the world.
Control room, can we go back to map number 3 for a moment here? And in this particular map, Priya, I want you to focus. You'll see here in this, looks like the original design, the West Bank is this dark area in the middle of the green, and yet there's a little spot of green or a different color in the middle. Why was the map? What is that?
Well, that is actually, that shows you how important Jerusalem and Bethlehem are. That's what that yellow dot you're looking at. And that's a large Israeli settlement. There's a large population of Israelis living there.
Okay. And then let's go over to map number 5, control room, if we could take a look at that. And folks, I believe in using maps because you can learn a lot from maps. And so this is a blow-up of what we've been looking at. And maybe, Priya, could you talk a little bit about what are our listeners or viewers seeing in here?
So, as you look at the West Bank, you see it spotted with these dark, these green blurbs, and those are actually Jewish settlements across the West Bank. And so you have to ask yourself, how divided, how separate are they if these are where the people are living? And so you can see that even though it is considered Palestinian Authority, there are many pockets of settlements and pockets of people that have to be considered in any decision we do make.
So does that mean if you were to get a two-state solution, as an example, and we're looking at, let's just keep it real simple, let's just focus on the land that is Israel and the West Bank on this map, does that mean that all these little dots inside of the West Bank, those are Jewish settlements or settlers that have to then be relocated?
If that becomes a future Palestinian state, yes. And if it becomes a future Israeli state, all of that light yellow will have to leave. And so it's very contentious right now.
Okay, so let's go to photograph number 6. This is, I will represent to you, a photograph that was taken in Foggy Bottom in Washington, D.C. at a formal dining room in the State Department. And I guess conceptually I wanted you to see this picture because this is the beginning in the past several months of hopeful dialogue between representatives of Israel and Palestine. And I'd just like to see, do you have any comments about what the audience is looking at here now?
Well, this actual negotiation is considered extremely paramount to the future and the stability of the region. And this past week, with the unification of Hamas and Fatah, we've seen that it hasn't dissipated into what most hoped for. It's been a very heated and debate-filled week, and the peace that's shown in this picture is not promised tomorrow or next week.
One thing I want to point out to you, Priya, is that if you look on the right side of this picture, you'll see a woman sitting across from Secretary Kerry, and that lady is whom? Do you recognize her face?
Well, she's the Israeli representative at the table, and she doesn't look quite too happy with the current situation.
All right, and the person who's sitting right next to her, the way that they set up the place cards for the table setting here, that looks like, to me, is whom?
That's Erica, the Palestinian representative at the table. And so it's very interesting that they placed them together. May have been, the best, might have been motherly peacekeeping.
So one last comment, and then we'll go to the break here. Notice in the background, Priya, that even though the United States, represented by Secretary Kerry, was purporting to act as a mediator for these talks, notice the arrangement of the flags, which struck me as being a bit odd.
Well, I think...
Do you have a reaction to that at all?
I feel like in the air of diplomacy that maybe it was out of courtesy to, Justice Minister, Livni. I don't think they wanted to offend anyone.
I guess I would have put the flag with the American flag in the center, and not have the Israeli flag in the center. But
they were trying to be gracious, maybe.
So be it. All right, we're going to go, ladies and gentlemen, to a short break here, and when we come back, we'll get into some more of the depth and excitement vis-a-vis these discussions, what went wrong, and we'll look at whether or not there's any hope for the future. So we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Hello, I'm Martin Despang, and I'm the host together with the one and only Ali Amashta, and our show is called Urban Transcendence. And Urban Transcendence is about identifying where we have a unique situation of a vibrant city in one of the most beautiful natural environments. So how these two can coincide, sometimes conflict, how they could find reciprocity in the 21st century is what we're excited about. And we're planning on bringing in a diverse body of guests, both from the arts and the science and the established and the wise and the emerging generation. So hope you will join us. We'll always be on Thursdays from 1 to 2.
We're back. You are watching a show that has to do with possibly failed negotiations in the Middle East. We're talking about Israel and Palestine, deal broken or hope. And helping us with this discussion is the ThinkTech Asia winner of the award for Hawaii's Future International Superstars, Ms. Priya Rashid. And Priya is a UH junior, and she's about ready to head off in a few months as one of 4 congressional interns to Washington to assist our congressional delegation, and you'll have your work cut out for you because they could use a lot of assistance, I'm sure. Priya, at the break, or right before the break, we were talking about the commencement of this recent negotiations between Israel and Palestine. And Control Room, if you could put up photograph number 9 for us, that would be awesome. And this is a photograph taken in the early stages of these negotiations when there was a lot of hope. And can you help our audience identify the individuals other than Secretary Kerry? Who's in this American baseball handshake?
Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, and they were joining to find some sense of stability for the future. Excuse me. That was President Shimon Peres. I did not look at the TV close enough. Excuse me.
Okay, and so we have this hope for the future. The negotiations start, and rumble on for the last several months. And one of the things that is involved in a challenge as we go are the various positions that have been taken. So would you summarize for us, help the audience, what are the positions taken by each side? So let's take the Palestinian side first. What was their position in these negotiations?
Well, recently the Palestinian representatives have acknowledged that Israel has a right to a state, and that was a large concession towards peace. But they really would like to see a large group of prisoners, Palestinian prisoners that are in Israel prisons, released. They would like to see less gate guards, less hostility between the Israeli soldiers, and definitely they would like to see more representation, better land rights, and also they would like to be acknowledged as a state and, if possible, to have their own autonomy as a representative in the world of Palestine.
Okay, so what you're saying that is really of interest is in this whole drive to create a so-called two-state solution is that the Palestinians took the position that they would recognize Israel as Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Yes?
Not particularly. They have acknowledged the right of Israel as a state, but they have not recognized the right to Israel as a Jewish state. Many of the Palestinians are Arabs and Christians, and if they do concede that this is a Jewish state, they do lose the right to return, which is a very contentious issue among Palestinians.
The right to return to where?
And the right to return is the idea that many Palestinians, there are many Palestinian Jews living in Israel right now, and if they lose the right to return, they cannot see their families, they cannot go back to Israel as residents. And that is a very contentious issue. It's a very, it's at the heart of self-determination that if they say it, it means that they are not allowed to go back.
Let me interrupt your chain of thought for a second here. Priya, how old are you?
I'm 21.
21. Now, ladies and gentlemen, do you see what I was talking about earlier about showing you Hawaii's A-team coming on in terms of international affairs, foreign policy, geopolitics. This young woman is a junior at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and you can see exactly why we here at ThinkTech and the ThinkTech Asia staff have awarded her this prize of being one of Hawaii's future international superstars. You can see this right now, it's obvious. Okay, we've talked about the Palestinian side. Let's flip over now and go, what was the Israeli side?
Well, the Israelis are, they definitely want to be recognized as a Jewish state. And that has been Prime Minister Netanyahu's explicit goal. But many of these goals of government have seemed to infringe or ignore Palestinian rights. But that isn't exactly their fault. They are trying to strengthen their government, they're trying to strengthen their economy.
The Palestinians?
The Israelis.
The Israelis, okay.
And they're trying to strengthen, their state. And after coming out of, they've had several conflicts with Jordan, Syria, Egypt, it makes sense that they are trying to stabilize and centralize their government and their people under one culture and one religion.
Okay, so let me just go down a slightly different path, but related to what you just said. If we take the current state of Israel today, and there are, in Israel today, there are Arabs
Yes.
in Israel today. What is their status in society?
Well, currently, roughly 20% of Israelis are Arabs, and many of them are Palestinians. Many of them are Palestinian Jews, and that creates a lot of issues and conflicts in the citizens and their rights. A lot of the discrepancies between their rights are in land ownership, and a lot of the basic rights such as property and management, a lot of times even going and renting a property, going and buying a property. It's preferred that a Jewish family lives there. There's a lot of discrimination in jobs as well. And this is, it can't be sustained because no population wants to live in a nation that they're a second-class citizen in.
Within that class of Arabs, are they allowed to vote in Israel?
They are allowed to vote, but their votes are not for a lot of major issues it's leaded to Israelis and Jewish Israelis.
And are they allowed to participate in the Knesset, the legislature?
Yes, but for the most part, the majority of the legislature, there's a huge bias and
they're a very small minority.
Yes, they are extremely underrepresented right now.
Okay, let's go down to photograph number 10 here, if we could. And in this picture, we see the two negotiators. The Justice Minister for Israel on the left, and what is her name?
Livni.
Livni. And on the right of Mr. Kerry is the...
Well, that's their chief negotiator, Erekat.
Erekat, okay. And so, Priya, as I look at this photo, nobody looks really happy there.
Well, the negotiations have not gone as planned. Many of the issues that were supposed to be decided and also solved they were unable to compromise. This means that they weren't able to reach a lot of core decisions, like what should happen to the borders, what should happen to key water reservoirs, the area bordering Jordan. And these aren't small issues that you can each make concessions on. These are principled arguments. Israel is very concerned about the security of the Jordanian border, and Palestine would like that land to be part of Palestinian Authority, and that there is a direct
conflict.
Exactly. Yeah. So who should control this land?
Let's go to the breakdown of these talks now. One of the areas where clearly there was a breakdown was in this whole notion of a two-state solution. So what happened there?
Well, the obstacles to a two-state solution became apparent very quickly in the negotiations. The idea that these pockets of settlements, the idea that the population of Palestine is very disjointed geographically, has posed huge threats to the peace and the joining physically of these groups. And then the fact that they're not working in a static bubble, they're working in a very changing world. In the last month, Hamas and Fatah reunited, and that caused a huge amount of turmoil for the Israelis. And
hold on one second. Let me go if we can, control room. Let's go to photograph number 11 if we could here. And this is photograph number 11 coming up here. This is precisely what you're talking about here. What are we seeing?
So this is Mahmoud Abbas and also the leaders with other leaders of the leaders of Hamas, which is considered under American and also by Israelis as a terrorist organization. But they are representing roughly half of the Palestinians, and so it has caused a much contention because Israel refuses to work with anyone that was working with Hamas, which makes sense. They have caused a lot of violence and a lot of instability in the region.
So this photograph actually, what you're saying, Priya, is this really represents one of the, in addition to the breakdown of the two-state solution, this reunification, or I don't know if it's a reunification, this deal, conciliation between the leaders of Fatah
and
with its Egyptian roots, and Hamas with its Lebanese roots.
Yes, and also very pro-Palestinian, very conservatively pro-Palestinian roots.
So these two, the reunification of these, or unification of these two groups, was an additional reason for the breakdown, because once Israel saw this handshake, this deal, their reaction was,
They said no. They said, you can either have peace with them or you can have peace with us. And that is, some dangerous words to have someone pull out of a negotiation. It really shows the severity and seriousness of this decision on the part of the Palestinians.
There's another reason for the breakdown in the talks here, and I want to go to photograph number 8, if we could, control room. Let's take a look at this, and what do we see here?
So this is the West Bank wall, and it's actually, the major concern isn't the wall itself, but the implications of the wall.
Okay, now hold on a second. Now, for an audience that doesn't know this wall, where was it put up during the negotiations?
Well, it was expanded during the negotiations.
Okay.
14,000 new settlements, Israeli settlements, were added
During the negotiations.
During the negotiations.
So what's the significance? Let's pretend that we're seeing now, because I don't know for sure, a piece of new wall, and some of those settlements on one side there are new, and they have been created during the course of these negotiations. What was the impact of that?
Well, these walls represent two, very contradictory things. On one hand, they do represent the development and the growth of Israel. They've put large amounts of money into the settlements and into securing these settlements. But for the Palestinians, these are terribly humiliating. These checkpoints are often monitored by Israeli soldiers who at times can be very, they're doing their job and trying to secure it, but it's seen as a huge humiliation. And for the Israelis, especially the Israeli Jews, this wall represents safety and security, and that their government is trying to keep them safe. And so to remove it is, you can't, but to keep it, you're only adding to the backlash.
We're talking about Israel and Palestine, deal broken or hope. And what we've been talking about, Priya, here in the last few minutes is kind of the series of key points that resulted in the breakdown of the discussions. And one of them that we talked about a little bit before was this conciliation between Fatah and Hamas. And it seems to me that Israel, one of the difficulties, if I look at it from a negotiation standpoint, that Israel trying to negotiate and not knowing who's in charge, who's on first base, if you will, and that whoever that was did not have the broad, strong political consensus necessary to cut a deal. So I would have thought that the unification of or conciliation of Fatah and Hamas, am I pronouncing it correct? Fatah and Hamas, that would be a good thing for Israel.
Well, it may not be a good thing for Israel per se, but it is a very good thing for the peace process. It definitely.
And why is that?
Just as you said, it definitely clears up the logistics. It makes it much easier. And though, just like our president can't represent 100% of his citizens, Abbas can't represent 100% of the Palestinians. But it is a huge step forward for him representing it as a state. The legitimacy of the state is that he has a majority of support.
So let's go control room to photograph number 12, if we could, please, number 12. So here we have the sad-faced John Kerry, Secretary of State, who's been racing around the Middle East trying to force this deal together and has failed.
Well, I have to say, Kerry, you gave it a great shot, but he was saying at the beginning of these negotiations that if these failed, these would be the third intifada, the third uprising. There would be more conflict and more bloodshed afterwards, but we have to hope that that is not the case.
Well,
have to hope.
So let's do this. Let's, Priya, let's you and I take a commercial break, and when we come back after the break, we'll move from this whole notion that what the United States was trying to do was shove a round peg into a square hole and kind of force a deal to look towards the future and to see whether there's hope to put this deal together. And so, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We'll be back right after the break here. You're watching ThinkTech Asia.
I'm Jay Fidel. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us.
Okay, it's every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll see you there.
We're back. This is ThinkTech Asia. I'm your host, David Day, and we are talking about Israel and Palestine, deal broken or hope. And helping us with this discussion is a rather extraordinary young woman. This is Priya Rashid, who's joined us from the University of Hawaii here. Priya is an undergraduate. I'll have to tell you, if you've been watching this program, you know she is a Middle East scholar in the Rolls-Royce category. But more importantly, we have Priya here in the studio because she is a ThinkTech Asia award winner for our award for Hawaii's Future International Superstars. And I guess this is kind of like Dancing with the Stars, only you've already performed, you're already going to the next level, and everybody's flipped up the tens or whatever it is, and we're just having a chat together with you. So, but actually, Priya, I've learned a lot from this conversation that we've had, and I know our audience has as well. And so, thank you so much for spending the time. And let me just say, on behalf of ThinkTech Hawaii and our show ThinkTech Asia, it's obvious to me, it's obvious to the staff here in the studio, and it's obvious to our audience that you deserve this award. And so, without further ado, let's go back to our discussion. When we ended right before the break, we had this rather ugly picture of John Kerry, Secretary Kerry, and Control Room. Could we put that back up, please, number 12, so that we could bring our audience. So we have a square peg or a round peg doesn't go into a square hole kind of concept, and so the deal is broken, right?
And it's we're all holding our breath, waiting to see what will happen. The past week has been, I feel almost bad for Kerry, because it's what his it's like you had one job, and that was to find peace in the Middle East, but it's not as easy as anyone thought it would be.
Well, in some ways it was almost, this is my view, but it's almost naive to think that you could slam this thing together and force a deal, because negotiations have to go together voluntarily. You can't coerce people, and so let's go to you now, Priya, and let me ask you the question that our audience wants to know. I mean, we've got a few minutes left in the program here. Is there hope? I mean, here's the thing, that face of the graying, beat up U.S. Secretary of State, that's an old generation that's going to be gone. And so the world and my generation, we're all going to turn to your generation to solve this, which seems like a timeless dispute problem in the Middle East that is at the core of security in that region of the world, and it has enormous ramifications outwards towards U.S., Europe, and so forth. Is there hope, and how can you show us a path for the future for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, in my humble opinion, the two-state solution, as the negotiations have shown us in the past few weeks, is extremely difficult to garner. And if we had even managed to make it through the negotiations, how would we have on the ground logistically done it? How would we separated the Israelis and the Palestinians? That is a huge question. But one thing that you can say is that if we could in the future try a one-state solution, if we could open our mind to maybe considering it, people have a tendency to accept peace, and they want security, both the Israelis and the Palestinians. And hope is our last, that's our last stand, and we can't ever take for granted the fact that both parties involved want peace. They care about their families, they care about their children and their people, and to let that make it sound as if conflict is inevitable takes that for granted. I think that simplistically, both parties, especially right now, Israel has to make large concessions in its treatment of Palestinians, including in the West Bank.
What you're proposing is a radical departure, and you know what? That's what's so fresh about having young leaders like yourself coming on and superstars in the international arena coming on, is that you've got a fresh, outside-the-box way of thinking, and so ladies and gentlemen, this is kind of like being with Mark Zuckerberg in his dorm room when he's forming Facebook. And we're here with a woman who clearly is going to be one of the international superstars, policymakers in our country in the years to come. And my generation has always been, ever since I was a little kid, it's always been two-state solution. I never heard of anything like a one-state solution. Okay, so let me ask you to do this. In the time remaining, one of the most fascinating things that I ever heard was that at the funeral of Walt Disney, some reporters came up to his wife and said, Mrs. Disney, it's a shame that Walt never saw Disney World in Orlando. And Mrs. Disney turned to the reporter and said, you don't understand my husband. My husband saw everything about Disney World. He visited every ride, every corner of this amusement park in his mind. He was a dreamer. And somebody who's a dreamer can visualize the way things ought to be in the future. And so, what I'm asking you to do, Priya, is be a dreamer for a moment. Be the Walt Disney of the creator of peace and stability in the Middle East. And what is that? Paint that picture for our audience. What does it look like?
Well, if you can imagine it, the idea would be that Palestinians, whether they're Arab, Israeli, or Christian, and even if they're Israeli Palestinians, will live side by side to Israeli citizens, Israeli Jews, in peace, and that resources such as the large oil reserves, the amounts of water, will be shared and allocated appropriately. And if in the future, if that could be achieved, and that will be difficult, but it's very much achievable, would be the best and the most prestigious thing for both parties. It would bring about peace, economic stability, and it would allow them to truly reach their full potential in the world. And with their resources, including the new oil reserves, and also their economy, they could be a contender and a superpower, in the Middle East, if they could find a way to settle their differences, especially the inequalities right now, and utilize the resources of both parties. And that would be every politician in the world is trying to figure out how to get there, but every politician in the world sees that as the end, if that is even possible.
So all those little colorations on the map, the Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, the wall, what you're saying is that the solution in the future is really a one-state solution, is to wipe all that clean.
And it will be difficult, but as we've seen in every conflict, whether it was World War II, whether it was even our civil rights movement, or in the situations in the apartheid in South Africa, it can be done, and that is what our hope is that peace is our only true sustainable solution. And to make bets on it and to make ideas that if this doesn't happen, we're not going to reach peace is, a little bit one-sided and a little bit simplistic, because we all want peace, including the Palestinians and the Israelis, most definitely.
So we're going to leave you, ladies and gentlemen, with the thought that one of the key pieces to the future of the Middle East, which Priya has talked about, and Control, if we could come back to photograph number 11, if we could, is this reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. And it seems to me, Priya, that this is an event that occurred out of these failed negotiations, right? Or, maybe not helped cause the problem.
They may not have been causal, but they are not helping the situation in terms of the complexity. It may be very good for the Palestinians to be unified, but like anything, it adds another layer of complexity that must be deciphered and analyzed and interpreted by both parties.
So, but what you're saying is that for the future, the beginnings of a unified political consensus within Palestine, or the Palestinians, then that is a step in the right direction towards the dream of a one-state solution. In other words, you have to develop consensus and integrate this piece,
yes.
And then you can fold it into an integration and consensus for the larger whole.
I hope so. I hope that this unification means that the leaders, both Hamas and Fatah, are ready to make concessions and sacrifices for their own people, and that means working with Israeli leaders as well.
Priya, in the weeks and months to come, those of us here at ThinkTech Hawaii undoubtedly will ask you to come and join us for seminars or other programs. But on behalf of ThinkTech Hawaii and our staff here on the ThinkTech Asia program, I'd like to thank you for participating with us today. I think our audience would agree you've done a wonderful job in educating all of us on these negotiations, why they worked, why they didn't work. And we'd like to wish you the very, very best in your career, and congratulations on being one of Hawaii's future international superstars. And ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll agree with me that our future is in good hands. So last word to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, and we will all be watching the news, holding our breaths to see what comes.
And we'll be looking for your solution. Ladies and gentlemen, good night.